Hi, this is Jeff Bellion, and today I'll demonstrate how to use the debug mode Frameserver to get your finished video out of Premiere Pro and into Encore without having to perform an intermediate render first or sacrifice the convenience of using Encore's automatic transcoding feature. Before I let you get too involved in this tutorial, however, you need to know that this technique only applies to Premiere Pro version CS3 and earlier. The export mechanism for Premiere Pro CS4 is significantly different than that used in prior versions, and the Frameserver plugin won't work in CS4. So no matter how fascinating and enthralling you think my tutorials are, you'll just be wasting your time watching this one if you only have Premiere Pro CS4. Of course, if you're a producer or director looking for new voiceover or narrator talent, then by all means, please keep watching. Let's talk just a little bit about the debug mode Frameserver, what it is and what it does. It's a plugin for Premiere Pro, so it must be installed separately. The installer program is very straightforward and easy to use. The plugin creates a file that acts like a temporary bridge across a river. Imagine this scenario. Your office is on one side of the river, and you need to get a package to an office directly across the river from you. The problem is that the nearest bridge is miles upriver, and most of your delivery time is spent driving to the bridge, driving back downriver to the destination, driving back to the bridge, and then driving back to your office. You know that it would only take a few of these trips before you try really hard to find a faster, easier way to deliver packages to the other office. Well, it's the same way with video data. Premiere sits on one side of the river, and the destination application, in this case Encore, sits on the other side. Most times, to get the video data from Premiere into Encore, you'd need to render out an intermediate file from Premiere and then import that new file into Encore. That's just like driving to the permanent bridge and back to complete the package delivery. But what if you could get a bridge to magically appear on demand just outside your office, stay there long enough for you to complete the delivery and return back to the office, and then disappear until it was needed again? Not only would it save you tons of time, but there wouldn't be any upkeep needed on the bridge. No repair crews standing by, no tolls to be collected, no permanent infrastructure required at all. The bridge file, or signpost, that is created by the Frameserver is just like that magical bridge. It doesn't take up any permanent space on your hard drive. In fact, it doesn't take up much temporary space either. It appears only when you ask for it, it delivers the data to the destination application, and then it disappears completely when the delivery is finished. Here in Premiere Pro, I've got a short sequence ready to export. To use the Frameserver, begin the export just like you would for any other export format. Go to File, Export, Movie. Click on the Settings button. In the General tab, select the File Type drop-down list. Choose Debug Mode Frameserver. Select the appropriate export range. I'll use entire sequence for this one. Select Export Video and Export Audio. Be sure to uncheck Add to Project when finished. Why should you do that? Well, remember I said that the signpost file generated by the Frameserver would disappear when the export was finished? When the export's done, there won't be anything to add to the project. Switch to the Video tab. The compressor is already set to Debug Mode Frameserver, and if you select the drop-down list, you'll see that the Frameserver is the only option available. Regardless of your project and sequence settings, make sure that the remaining options are set to match the DVD video format that you'll be using, NTSC or PAL, standard or widescreen. Here, I've set the options for NTSC DVD. Finally, uncheck Recompress. Go to the Keyframe and Rendering tab. Ensure that the Fields drop-down list shows the field order of your source video. Otherwise, the resulting DVD will have incredibly jerky motion. On the Audio tab, it's best to set the compressor to uncompressed. Encore can transcode it to 2-channel Dolby Digital audio later on. One quick side note. If you'll be using Premiere or a third-party audio encoder to generate a multi-channel Dolby Digital or DTS audio file, then you don't need to bother with the Audio tab. In fact, you shouldn't export audio to Encore at all via the Frameserver. Make sure to go back to the General tab and uncheck Export Audio if you plan on using a multi-channel audio file in Encore. Set the sample rate, the sample type, and the channels to match your source audio. The interleave setting has no effect on the Frameserver. Click OK. The file that you'll be creating is the Frameserver's signpost file. You need to tell Premiere and the Frameserver what the name of that file will be. Because I'm incredibly clever, I'll choose the name signpost.avi. I'll bet you're amazed at how I come up with this stuff. All kidding aside, you do need to add the AVI file extension to the file name manually. If you just use signpost, then a quirk in the Windows operating system will prevent the Frameserver from deleting the file when it's done. You'll end up with a 0-byte file that has no extension, and you won't be able to delete it. So make sure to add the .avi extension when you give the signpost file a name. Click Save. The Frameserver setup screen appears. For Frameserving to Encore, make sure that the Video Output Radio button is selected and that RGB24 is the selected format. Select the option to write audio as PCM samples in Signpost AVI. That's required, or the audio portion of the Premiere sequence won't show up in Encore. Click Next. Now the Frameserver status screen appears. Notice that all of the options that were selected on the setup screen are still selected, but they're grayed out. The selections can't be changed once Frameserving has started. Also notice that there is some new information at the bottom of the screen. During Frameserving, the Frameserver will update statistics on how the process is going. The statistics display and the Stop Serving button in the bottom right corner seem to indicate that Frameserving has already started. So now you're probably wondering how, if Frameserving has started, we can have zeros across the board for the video and audio statistics. Well, that's a good question, and I've got a good answer. Although the Frameserver has started doing its thing, no actual frames will be served until Encore asks for them. Let's move the Frameserver status screen out of the way. Notice that the standard Premiere Render progress dialog is now visible, but it's not doing anything either. Like the Frameserver statistics, it's waiting for Encore to ask for the frames. I'm guessing that by now both the Frameserver status screen and the Premiere Render progress dialog are tired of waiting for me to get going, so let's head over to Encore and start asking for those video frames. Here in Encore, let's import that impatient signpost file as a timeline. Go to File, Import As, Timeline. Navigate to and select the Signpost AVI file, and then click Open. I'll scrub the timeline. Notice that there is almost no delay or hesitation while I scrub. The Frameserver is serving frames as fast as I and Encore can ask for them. That's very cool. Check the DVD transcode settings column of the project panel for the Signpost AVI file, and you'll see that it is set to automatic. The signpost file will be transcoded using Encore's automatic transcoding feature. Now let's get to the heart of the matter here in Encore. We know that the signpost file is temporary, so we need to find a way to make the frames that are currently being served to Encore permanent. The way to do that is background transcoding. Select the Signpost AVI file in the project panel, and then go to File, Transcode Now. The progress panel opens automatically, and the progress bar indicates that transcoding is underway. Let's take a look at the Frameserver status screen, where we can finally see useful statistics. The large variation in percentage of real time is dependent on the content of the video frame currently being transcoded. On average, you can expect transcoding to proceed just a little bit faster than real time, unless you've added CPU-intensive effects in Premiere. Realize that Premiere has to render each frame completely before handing it off to the Frameserver. For this short clip, the transcoding finishes up quickly. However, for clips that require longer transcoding times, be aware that background transcoding allows you to continue to work on your DVD project in Encore even while the signpost file is being transcoded. Back in Encore, a quick check of the project panel reveals that the Signpost AVI file has been transcoded. This is important because now our Encore project points to the permanent transcoded version of the file and no longer points to the temporary untranscoded signpost file. I'll demonstrate that even more clearly in a moment. Now that the Frameserver has done its job, we can stop Frameserving. Click on the Stop Serving button to exit the Frameserver. Notice that the Premiere Pro Render Progress dialog disappears as well, and we are returned to the normal Premiere interface. The export from Premiere is complete. I've opened up my computer and navigated to the folder where we saved the Signpost AVI file. It's gone. The magical temporary bridge to Encore has disappeared, just like we expected it to do. Being a details guy, though, there is a small part of my mind concerned that because the signpost file is gone, so is the work we did in Encore. Let me reassure myself, which is almost as redundant as allowing me to introduce me to myself. Let me reassure myself that the work we did is held safely in Encore. I probably should explain to the more sophisticated members of the audience that that last sub-reference was to Austin Powers. Here in Encore, let's scrub the timeline and see what we've got. The video that we sent over the bridge from Premiere has indeed been transcoded and is now a permanent part of our Encore project. From here, we can continue to author our DVD. Well, that's it. You've seen how to use the debug mode Frameserver to get your Premiere Pro sequence into Encore without having to render an intermediate file or give up the convenience and quality of Encore's automatic transcoding. I hope you found this tutorial useful. This has been Jeff Belyoon. Thanks for watching.